All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I'm super excited about this one. As you can see, the guest is suited up, bringing the elite energy, came from his son right off the bat. I'm excited for this conversation. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Dominick Comer. Dominick, I want to go right into the man that you are today. How did you get there? All the ideologies that you carry. You're a successful businessman and father and husband. But I want to start this episode like I start all my episodes. I want to take it all the way back because there will be clues in your story. So take me all the way back. Where were you born and raised? What was the family life like? What were you like as a young kid? And let's slowly build the story today.
Yeah, I'm glad you started it that way, and thank you for having me on. Because everything that happened throughout has formed me into who I have been blessed to become today. So I started off blue-collar family, grew up in Wixom, Michigan, in a trailer park. Oddly enough, my dad lived across the street from the trailer park. My mom lived in the trailer park, so we could ride our bikes back and forth. I have two brothers. One's older, one's younger. And, that's where we started life. I mean, when I go back to telling my story, there will be a lot of things that come out that maybe seem hard or difficult or whatever, and I don't want any of this to come out and anybody to feel bad for the way that I grew up or anything that happened. The only reason that I tell my story, and I'll get very detailed into it when it's needed, is so that anybody who's watching this can know that if I can do it, that anyone else can do it, that all things are possible. So to go on from there, life was normal for me. Even growing up where I grew up, every time I walked out of the door, I could look up and down the street and I had 20 friends around. That was just the way that we grew up. We like to get into a little bit of trouble. We like to play around. But, looking back, nothing was really not that normal to me until I got into my teenage years and realized that when I started smoking cigarettes at 11 years old, that's not normal. Started smoking weed at 12 years old and drinking in front of parents, like not my own parents, but friends' parents. That's not normal. The amount of fights that we got into weren't normal. And where everybody's direction in life was just not normal. It wasn't acceptable to me at a certain point in life.
So, you just perfectly summarized the fact that it's all you know when you're a child, though.
Yeah.
The environment that you're born into, you don't understand how other people are growing up. You don't know what a healthy environment and family unit looks like. You don't know the support that you should get from a community and guidance and mentorship. It's like, so you're just making decisions as they come without being able to evaluate them in the framework of life. Like if you got to see all spectrums, it would be easy to be like, wow, like the actions that I'm taking are very low caliber and they're not going to lead to a healthy road. Something had to be a little bit different about you at some point when you started to look around and recognize like, okay, this is not me. Because a lot of people that are born into that type of behavior and those type of families, they never break free, man. They stay in that programming forever because the programming is the mind. Like your mind is the only thing that can get you out of there. And if you grow up in those environments, a lot of times that programming is going to run in your brain for the rest of your life. You're low class, you're this, you're that, you're the other thing. So I don't want to expedite through your young childhood too quickly. So were sports a big part of your life? Was your older brother a role model to you? Was your dad your hero in life like most young boys? Like really try to help me understand if we went back and the 8 to 10 or 12-year-old Dominick sat here today, what would he say life was? What were the things that were pulling you to the future? Was there any reflection yet? Like just a little more into that.
Yeah. So my older brother was a wrestler. He started wrestling at 6. and he's 2.5 years older than me. So I started going to wrestling practice at 4. That was one day a week. It was Wednesday night wrestling practice, and he started going to tournaments. My brother was really skilled. He was a really skilled wrestler. I always looked up to him in that way. I didn't put much energy into it. I was kind of the goofball. I, went to tournaments and just tried to flirt with the other kids' sisters, right? So I didn't take it that seriously growing up, and it didn't really matter. My parents were really there to see Justin wrestle and do good, and if I did wrestle in tournaments back then it was kind of just I didn't care if I won or I lost. I was happy just hanging out with all of my friends. But you asked the question along the way, like, something had to have been a little bit different. I think that I was gifted with recognizing the things that were different along the way in life. A story that I'll always tell is a few doors down from my dad's house when we were there, that one of the neighbor girls started dating, who was it? Joe Dumars. Joe Dumars? I think so, from the Detroit Pistons. And I always saw this black Porsche, 1988 black Porsche Turbo Carrera 911 in that driveway 4 doors down with tinted windows, and this big guy would get out of it and take this girl on dates. And I was a young boy, probably 6 or 7, and I couldn't help myself but to go check that car out. And I ran down there, met Joe Dumars, and he said, "Let me take you for a ride." And he took me for a ride up and down the road. And it was like, whoa, like, this is different. This is a different lifestyle. I've never seen one of these cars before in my life. I always
that
recognized
one
it.
moment might have literally altered the course of your life forever, because if that got into your subconscious that, like, is there a way better life out here? Is there, like, how, this is a guy that grew up somewhere, that was a kid somewhere, and he's driving this beautiful Porsche and he's taking this good-looking girl out. Like, wait a second, maybe like that one moment, people forget that every day your actions to the world around you could be a monumental moment for somebody else. And if you were more conscientious about the little decisions that you make, and you recognize that you have an impact on the world, either positive or negative, it's very rare you have a neutral impact.
Yeah.
You generally are making things better or you are making things worse. And it's like, you, to this day, the first memory that pops back up when you're reflecting on your childhood is like, I remember that Porsche.
Yeah.
And you remember vividly the feeling that Porsche gave you. It's not even just the car. It's like that represented something important.
It really did. It was wild. And I know this later in life, that I recognize a lot of these nuances that have helped me pull through, because I think, beginning there, I think that's when I really started being a dreamer, which also, in the environment that I was in, got pushed back on a lot, of course, right? Those things weren't for people like us. My parents had a vision for my life already planned. I mean, by the time that I could try to figure out anything, like, they had it planned out for me and my brothers.
Do you remember what it was?
I know exactly what it was.
Tell me.
It was, go to school. We don't care about your grades. You just need to finish high school or GED. Didn't matter. You're going to get a job at Ford, like your dad, and now at that point, stepmom. And that's what you're going to do. You're going to work there for 30 years. You're going to get insurance benefits. You'll work up a pension, and then you'll retire. And honest to God, I grew up every single year just saying, I just have to get through this school thing. Then I'm going to go work at Ford, and then I'm going to get my insurance benefits. And who cares if I live week to week like everybody else? I'll retire after 30 years. Like, that was it. It was the programming that I had. But it wasn't their fault. It was the biggest that they could think for us. It was honestly the biggest life that they could imagine for us.
In their mind, that was success. And if anything, that does come from love, from their understanding of the formula. They're like, this is how we set up our child to live a good life. Because if the max on your scale what you deem is possible for you and therefore your children. If it's here, you're like, well, I'm getting my kid to that level. Like, just tough it out. Don't look at anyone else that's living these incredible lives because they have things that you don't have. It's like, why?
Yeah.
If you start to dig into those thoughts, why is that? You can't find answers, and that's where liberation comes from. That's where your spirit can start breaking through. But it's like you almost can't fault your parents because people that don't have it within themselves, they don't know how to give it. If my cup is empty, how do I pour into your cup?
Right. But they love giving advice.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Well, like, it's coming from a place of they believe they are protecting you from the failures and struggles of the world. And what they don't realize is they're actually imprisoning you.
Yeah.
They are putting your mind and your potential, and almost all young kids, if we sat Cole in here today and we said, Cole, tell me about your dreams. What do you want to do in this life? That kid's going to have the most outlandish dreams ever. And if not for parents and teachers and education systems taking his little mind and beating it over the head with a club and saying, like, your grades suck. There's no way you can be successful. You're not popular. You're never going to have a lot of friends. Yeah. You're not, inherently whatever, so you're not going to have whatever it is. You take someone that has endless potential and you beat them over the head with a club through what you think is practicality.
Yeah.
And you ruin the dreams of people. You see it you see it everywhere.
Well, because it's naive to be a dreamer, isn't it? Right? Or you're gullible if you think you can have that. Like, stop believing in those things, right? I mean, these are all the things that these parents will tell their kids, and it's hard because you obviously every parent wants the best for their kids, almost every parent. But they end up hurting them more often.
You almost have to reframe that, though, because I know there's a million people that listen to messages like this, and you have to reframe it that wanting the best for your kids, you need to view it from the lens of wanting your children to find strength within themselves to tackle life's challenges and difficulties in search of their own dreams and strengths and what they want this experience to be. It is not what you think. What you think protecting your kids looks like is imprisoning them. You need to build them with the foundation, with the morality, with the structure, with the self-discipline, and like the tools that they garnish these things from. You need to give them that equipment, and then you need to take a step back. If you're going to teach someone how to build a house, eventually you literally have to take a step back and let them try to build a house. And they might fail.
Yeah.
But they have to start trying to build if you ever want them to be successful.
100%.
So you wrestled a little. Did you play other sports? Or did you have any heroes when you were a kid? Was there anything that really was pulling you to the future? Like when I was a little kid, Troy Aikman of the Dallas Cowboys and other people like it. And I loved Superman. Mm-hmm. But like what I didn't recognize until much later in life is those gave me ideals to strive for. It gave me these like incredible people that I held on a pedestal and said like, how can I be like that? And that's what was giving me a major upward pull. And I didn't have a lot of suppression of that. I had a lot of, like my Aunt Diane really poured into me the love of like you're going to be something. You can be something. Yeah. What was it for you?
Whew.
You got to take it way back.
It's way back. And that's a great question. I've never been asked that. If I think back to it, I mean, the person that I looked up to the most, that gave me the most hope in life, and it's not at any level of success that I knew of her having, it was actually my assistant principal in middle school.
Why?
Because she's the only person that I ever talked to that saw me as a leader and helped me understand that. And it was actually in a bad way. I was a bad kid in school. I had a lot of friends, but I was leading them to bad things. I was a punk, and I ended up in her office all the time, and she saw something in me saying, if you just took that leadership, that qualities that you have, and you did that for the good, think about how you could change the world. And that was wild to me. Mrs. Baker.
Think about that. Just like seeing that Porsche, what that did is it gave you a dream, or it gave you even just the contemplation of, could I have something like that? And then to have an adult that pulls out a mirror and basically is saying, you are more than what you believe yourself to be. And if no one's ever told you that, it's a shame, because look at kids follow you and you're leading them into bad decisions. Doesn't that mean they can follow you to good decisions too? It's like those moments, that's back to that small things can make an incredible impact. So that makes you feel something.
Yeah.
Do you remember when you're in like middle school or high school, was there ever a point where you started to question and doubt the story that you were being told, where it's like, you know what, maybe I'm not going to work it forward? Because when you first started telling me the story, the path's already laid out. Dominick does not sit here today, the man that you are, if you didn't have the courage to break free from that, or the rebellion that might have been necessary to break free from that. Where does that start to come into your mind?
I know exactly where it came in. Living in the trailer park, I remember watching these guys run these zero-turn lawnmowers around all of our common grounds. I knew the guy who owned the company. Always grew up saying, when I'm old enough, I'm going to work for you. I want to ride one of those. And always, remember walking down the street, talking to my friends, thinking about how rich that guy has to be. Mowing lawns, he's got to be living the dream. Like, this is a cool job. He gets to ride around on these things like Mario Kart. And I always looked at that and I said, I'm going to start my own landscaping company someday. And so as a small child, I started pushing lawnmowers around the trailer park. I started plowing and shoveling snow in the wintertime. And that was just kind of side money for me, but I was a worker. And I was working towards something. At the time, I didn't really know, but a little part of me said, I think I'm going to open a landscaping company, and I'm going to be the guy mowing these lawns one day. But it just did. That's what made me start thinking a little bit bigger and a little bit more entrepreneurish.
No, 100%. I see what happened there. You made an observation, which led to a seed being planted in your mind, which spread to, maybe I can do something like that, which then leads to action if you pursue it correctly, and then action leads to results. Like, dreams become reality because you do what you believe is possible, but you first have to have the belief that it's possible. So there was something inherently different about you, because you did start to recognize, despite what any member of society has told me, despite what any family member has told me, you started to be able to perceive the world around you and be like, maybe I can do something like that. So then what does the, kind of the end of middle school, high school look like for you? And we got to talk about your battle with like cigarettes, with drugs, because so many people are robbed of their potential because of I call them the trap doors in life, man.
Yeah.
It's like people fall into them because of a peer group, or because of pressure, or because everyone else is doing it, because it makes me cool, it makes this person like me, and then they never get out of that shit, or they break their value within themselves because they don't have self-discipline, they can't stop a habit. So we got to discuss those two things.
Yeah.
What was high school like, and what was the battle like with drugs? I can't even imagine starting to smoke at 11. Like,
I know.
it's unbelievable.
I'm thinking of my son Troy, who trains here, right?
And how old is Troy?
9.
He's 9. Imagine in 2 years he started smoking and drinking, and then weed comes into the picture. You don't even have your own psychology anywhere near a healthy state. And like, you start messing with consciousness changing drugs like, marijuana and other things. Jesus Christ. Like, that's a formula that could lead to incredible catastrophe, or sometimes maybe it happens to work out. So let's unpack this part.
Yeah. So I think that what people will get out of this is the value of association, right? You do become who you surround yourself with. I mean, my school was nicknamed Bakeland, right? I mean, that's what we did. So smoking and drinking and cigarettes and going outside. I mean, I smoked weed with student teachers in the parking lot. I mean, wild. When you think back on it, it's truly wild that that's kind of how we grew up. And I graduated in 2000. Well, I graduated in 2001. But I don't want to get ahead to that yet, because this is going to come full circle. So in high school, I did enough to get by. I still hung out with the kids who were smoking and drinking, still did all of that myself, still wrestled. And I always used to brag, like, I can still wrestle, I can smoke, and it's not affecting my breathing or anything like that. I would disappear on weekends and stay at a friend's house, and we would drink all night every weekend, and his parents would buy kegs, and it was just how it was. And again, thinking back to then, it was normal. That was just our life. That's how we lived. But I didn't really surround myself with anybody who aspired to do more. So my goal at that time, yes, of course, I had that little seed planted that, I'm going to be a landscaper. I'm going to own a landscaping company. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But I always had the Ford to fall back on. I just had to finish school. Like, that's all I had to do. So, still wrestling, get into 11th grade, get my girlfriend pregnant. She went to a different school. We met at a trade school in between. Man, I didn't know what the heck I was going to do. I mean, I was 16, 17 years old.
This had to be one of the moments in your life where it's like you shock into consciousness, like you become awake and you're like, because that is a fork in the road. The life that
Oh,
you
yeah.
were walking down, instantly someone presses a stop button and now you're staring down the face of an alternate reality. And it's like, oh my God. And sometimes those moments are so essential to us making the right decisions and finding our potential, because you can't just be asleep behind the wheel anymore. You can't be,
Yeah.
oh, this is just what we did. We drink on the weekends, we party, we sleep with who
Yeah.
we can. It makes you go, there are consequences of my actions. You gotta go further into this.
Everything halted at that point. Like, as far as the partying and all of that went, my friends were like, "Well, why can't you come out anymore?" And I'm like, "I got a baby on the way. Like, I have to figure this out." I ended up dropping out of high school, getting a full-time job at a Harley-Davidson dealership, which I loved. It was one of my
What
favorite
grade
jobs.
were you in when you dropped out?
11th.
11th grade. Said, hey, I got a responsibility, and you didn't run from it. You accepted
No,
it.
not at all. I mean,
That's a serious amount of courageousness on your behalf to say that, like, I'm going to sacrifice my own education and my own career and future because now I have something else that is demanded of me. That's a huge testament to your character.
thank you. And oddly enough, and God knows who will listen to this, but at that time when we told her parents that she got pregnant, her stepdad tried to pay me to leave and stay out of this kid's life because of where I grew up, because of where I was from, because I had nothing going for me in my life, and he didn't want that for his grandkid. So it made me even stronger to stick around.
I was going to say, that feeling of like someone being like, hey, you're so unworthy that like, I'll pay you to just go away. That is the fact that I'm hearing so much in your story that should have led to so much anger and viciousness. And a lot of people that are assholes in the world, it's because the world beat the hell out of them or made them jaded. And yet I have yet to find, where is the furious Dominick that's, F the world? Like, because that's brutal, man. To a young kid, hey, you're not shit is what that guy's saying. And I don't even want you to be in existence around this, my daughter and this child.
You know what? I think that was the first time in my life that I realized, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm going to prove you wrong. Right? And I used it as fuel. So I was going to be the best fucking father to that kid that I could be, with all the circumstances aligned. I mean, I'm a kid having a kid. So I quit school. I got a full-time job just so I could support him. I had to get my parents' permission to enroll myself in night school because I wasn't old enough to go try to finish, to get my diploma. So
what was your family like? Like your dad and your mom, you're dropping out of school, you're got a baby on the way. What are their perceptions? What are they telling you at that point? That takes the forward path and throws a wrench right in the mix. What is that dynamic like? I'm sure the formative years of that point of your life were so substantial.
I'll be honest, I don't remember what their reaction was because nothing at the time didn't really matter to them. I mean, it was good luck. I mean, and again, nothing.
What answers could they have? I mean, that's kind of, they don't have their lives really to their potential. They've never really, they have a broken family. They have their own struggles, and that's
Sure.
like, that's grace you find when you're older. Like when I look back and I look at my story, like people that might have mistreated me or misguided me, it's like, man, like they were flawed people too, and they were struggling. And a lot of them are they're not people that really seize their power. So how do I really fault them? Maybe if they had to write mentors, people, moments, they would have been 1,000 times the version of themselves, so I get it. And you, plus, sounds like you were hard-nosed. You were kind of like, you could make your own decisions and you were going to follow your path. A lot of kids don't even have that. A lot of kids need their parents to do everything, tell them everything.
Yeah.
You were more like, no, these are the decisions I'm making and it is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's the middle child in me. I mean, I was a little fireball. I was a little more free-spirited. And I had my own agenda, really. So there we are. I have that job. I end up buying my mom's trailer that we grew up in from her, and she moved out of the trailer park. I think she moved out. I don't remember where she moved to. I bought that and tried to make this work with my son's mom and him, and supporting a family at while I'm trying to finish school, going to night school 2 nights a week. And the relationship just didn't work out. I mean, it was between her and I, it was just a thing that just wasn't ever going to work out. And that's okay. I mean, I was always there for my son whether we were going through court and I was getting my son every other weekend, or later in the story when I had to move out of state and I came back every weekend to see him. It all worked out. So he was about 1 year old when we split. I ended up graduating high school a couple months before I would have graduated had I been going to school full time, but I also got to work. I ended up getting that job at Ford.
Wow. Okay, so now you fall back into the path that you probably lost sight of completely. And I can hear when you're speaking, like even about that woman in the relationship at the time. It's like you were both broken young kids trying to make your way. It's almost expected that it didn't work out.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to go down a road of complete hatred and rewrite the story in your mind. It's like, man, we were both trying to work through a difficult world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we both got put into a circumstance that was beyond our ability to handle, and it's difficult. And if more people were able to give kind of grace for the past, it would relieve them of a lot of guilt and shame and finger pointing and things like that. And I can tell you have that. I can see that in your story when you tell it. So let's pick up from the Ford point. So, because now you could ride that to retirement.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you sit here today, the man that you are. You could have just gone to work, gone home, drink beers, throw on NASCAR, and that's it. That could have been your life. But there's more pivotal points, clearly.
There is, and it's a lot of fun. Oh, man. Like, before I go there, when you get to look back on your life, you get to realize that you can go in multiple directions, but it's a choice that you have to make and a risk sometimes that you have to take in order to choose, be strong enough to choose to go in the other path. So this is a lot of fun to talk about. I started at the Wixom Assembly Plant in 2002, right before they were closing. So I was a line worker. I got in there making, $13.50 an hour. And I worked there for 6 months. I moved in with I had a roommate. I moved in with my cousin. And on my day of my getting my 6-month paycheck, the union representative was coming around with a clipboard and handed me my check, and he had a clipboard, and he said, all right, the plant's closing down and you need to get transferred. Where are you going to go? And I said, oh, well, someplace close would be great. And he's like, well, you don't have the seniority for that. He said, you have to go out of state. And I said, well, he said, you can go to Buffalo, New York, Twin Cities, Minnesota, Norfolk, Virginia, Kansas City, Missouri, or Louisville, Kentucky. And I said, I've never even been out of the state. Like, other than driving from Michigan to Pennsylvania to see my grandma, I've never been out of the state of Michigan. I've never been anywhere. I said, which one's closest? And he said, Louisville, 6 hours away. I said, okay, I guess he said either that or you're indefinitely laid off. I said, okay, then I'll go to Louisville. And I had to sign right there. And he said, great, you need to show up there on Monday. You're starting work on Monday. So at this point, I go back to my cousin's house where I live. I pack my bag. I don't have much of anything. I have a truck and I have my bag of stuff. And then I go to my mom's house and I'm like, Mom, who's watching my son at the time? Because it's my weekend to have him. And she's watching him until I get off work. And I go, I have to go to Kentucky and I have to start work there on Monday. I'm 19 years old and I hadn't saved up much money. I'd worked at this job for 6 months, bought a truck, which was taking my whole paycheck. I was making $13.50 an hour. I said, I don't even know how I'm going to survive until I get my next paycheck down there. And she said, I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any money. So go ask your dad. And if my dad watches this, he's going to be pissed. But I went over to my dad's house and I said, Dad, I have to go to Kentucky. And he said, yeah, I know, because he worked at the plant. The union guys already told him, like, hey, your son's got to go here. And I said, I don't have any money. Like, I don't know how I'm going to survive. I have food, or I don't have any place to stay. I don't even know where I'm going. And he said, well, you still owe me $100. He said, you remember that time when I bought you the mattress for your bedroom when you were 13 years old that you told me you'd pay me back for? You still owe me $100. And I got pissed, and I drove away with my stuff and headed down south to have no place to live. And I was homeless down there for 2 months. And I showered and brushed my teeth at the plant. I had a tent and a sleeping bag, and sometimes I slept outside until it got too cold. I slept in my truck. And then when I got my first paycheck, I used that money to drive back to see my son. And for 2.5 years, I was down there driving back every weekend to see my son.
Holy shit. I don't know how else to respond. I knew when I met you, because of how well put together you are and how you really have your psychology in line. I can see it in the way that you interact with others and the way that you interact with children. You have such a strong grip on who you are, and you've found your power back in the world. So I knew there was darkness in your story. I have yet to find someone that has the certain energy that people radiate, that really have themselves in line, that doesn't have like these extreme moments in their life.
Yeah.
And I try to think, I love understanding perspective. And while you just told that story, I was trying to think, what would it take for me to be a father to a child in that dire circumstance, to say, not only will I not assist you, you owe me money that I gave you when you were a child
To buy a mattress.
to buy something that you needed to exist. Like, to this day, no matter all the growth I've gone through, no matter all the growth you've gone through, no matter, to try to wrap your head around that type of ideology, I just don't get where that comes from. But that type of hardship in life, warriors are built through trials and tribulations. You are forged out of the fires that are on this earth. So at the end of the day, although it probably made the chip on your shoulder a mountain, you went from having a chip on your shoulder to a mountain. It's all on you. You got nobody, man. When your own father won't be there to aid you, it's on you. Although threatening and although difficult, he probably empowered you to a level that you could have never even come semi-close to had he helped you.
I agree. And I'm extremely grateful for all of it. Truly. I did have a chip on my shoulder, and I was pissed off about it. And looking
Probably rightfully so. I mean, legitimately, it's hard to ever judge anyone because you have to look at his circumstance, his money, his obligations, his mindset, his belief system. I get all that, but like sometimes there's justified anger, and in a moment like that, if you're a child, it's like, Dad, I needed somewhere to sleep when I borrowed that $100. You think you could maybe do that? You think maybe your basic obligation as a father in this world is like make sure I'm sleeping somewhere appropriate?
Yeah.
But it's like, I can tell, too, you learn grace with age because you realize that everyone's on a different level of the spectrum, and they only have what they have to give.
Yeah.
This story's blowing me away. Keep going. So 2.5 years of that, you're just in the straight struggle, but you said best character development that you've ever gone through. Let's talk about that.
Yes. And you know what? It was God's will. Like, and this is where that comes out. I was never religious or faith-based growing up. Never had any of that. I went to church when I lived in the trailer park as a kid, only to follow some girls there. Right, their mom would drive us there in the van to go to church, and other than that, so I'm down in Kentucky. I am working on the line. I'm angry every day because all I want to do is be home with my son and my family. I don't want to be down there. The union representative that sent me down there told us that we would only be there for 1 year. 1 year went by, and I go to my union president, and I said, what's the plan? When are we going back home? I'm driving back and forth. I have a family there. He's like, and I can't bring him down here because I don't have full custody of him. He said, forget about your family there. He said, this is your life now. And then I said some choice words that could have gotten me fired. Luckily, they didn't. But I was an angry person working on that line, slamming things around, and I was saying, God damn it, every other word, until one of my coworkers, who was also from Michigan, but he ended up bringing his family down there, and they were loving it. They were in God's country. Very Christian, very, very nice guy. He pulled me aside one day and he said, would you please just interchange the words God damn it with GD? Every time that you feel the need to say God damn it, just say GD. And I said, okay, whatever, man. Like,
I can't believe you didn't lash out at him, to be honest. I'm picturing that Dominick in life. And I mean, I felt the fire in my chest that I have when you just told me that story. If a union rep said that to me, yeah, you're getting every word in the book, and hopefully it doesn't escalate from there, because that is such a stab to the heart on, like, it's like, you told me something.
Yeah.
You set the expectation. I didn't bring up a year. You set the expectation.
Yeah.
And now you're looking me in the face and just like, I hate to say it, but like military recruiters. Oh yeah, you're going to get this, that, and the other thing, da, da, da. And then the moment, oh no, sorry, bro, things changed. Good luck.
Yeah.
That creates a major chip in people, because I take you for what you say. And you should do the same of me.
So I couldn't lash out at Jim. Jim was kind. Like, he had an energy around him that was just, he was kind, and it was more attracting me to learn how he could be so calm and so kind. And then I'd see him on break reading the Bible with a couple of other guys, and he knew my story at that point, that I just wanted to be home, that I had a child there, and my child was my world. And he invited me into his group in the Bible study. And he was sending me home every weekend with these discs that were sermons. And he said, listen to these on your drive. They were CDs. And that's all I did for 6 hours, there and back, there and back. Every week he would give me a new sermon to listen to, every single week. It changed my whole life.
What a guy. Shout out to this dude, Jim, because all of the programming that you had in your life up to that point, all the chaos, you could have been a victim forever, Dominick. You could have looked at the world and said, fuck you, and been a hateful, angry, spiteful person at all the things that didn't go your way, some of which that was so beyond your control. You didn't control to be born into a broken family. You didn't control being born in the trailer park. You didn't control all these different things. You could have easily fallen into a disempowering mindset forever. And yet this man, through his love for others, is what drove him to do this. Because he didn't just tell you to stop doing something and then cut you off. He was like, I'm going to give somebody something that I hold as valuable, that I believe might be able to help them. And I'm almost amazed that you were receptive to it, because I remember in my angriest, lowest, worst points in my life, man, you couldn't tell me nothing I didn't want to hear. You know what I mean? If you would have been like, oh, yeah, read the Bible, James, listen, I'd have been like, get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean? I got way bigger problems than that. But what we don't realize is, if you can reprogram your mind, that'll solve most of your problems for you. You're not what the world does to you. You're how you react to it.
Yeah.
Like, so really go into how that started to change your mind, those sermons, those messages.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just brought a whole new world ahead of me, and in fact, what it did is it brought my faith in my dreaming back. Like, my looking outside of what my everyday was. I started to understand what faith was, and believing that I could do something else. Like, it gave me that power back, whether it was talking through the Holy Spirit or eliminating the spirit of strife in your home and your life. There were so many things along the way that it literally started to give me like superpowers to break these chains. And it was really crazy. And I was going to look for the Bible verse that he shared with me. It was in the book of James. And it's while I'm still, I mean, I'm listening to these things, I'm talking to these guys on breaks, but I'm still an angry person at the time. And he shared a Bible verse in James. It might be James 9:9. It's ringing a bell. And it said, he said, I want to read this to you, and I want you to understand what it means to you, because it applies to your life. In this verse, and I'm not going to be able to say it verbatim, but it said, you will go to a place to labor. And basically, without faith and patience of returning to your homeland, you'll vanish into dust. And that was the thing. He said, if you want to go home, just have faith that you're going to get there, and be patient, because it's not going to happen on your time. It's going to happen on God's time. So I stopped complaining about going home, and I stopped asking about going home, and I just prayed about it. And I said, I'm going to be patient, and I'm going to wait, and it'll happen. And I believe I had to build up that faith that it was really going to happen. And man, this is where it turns wild. It was a year after I stopped complaining about it, but knew that I was still going, right? And I know that my dad was helping along the way in the backgrounds. I don't know exactly who he talked to or what he did, but 2.5 years into being down there, 56 of us went to Kentucky from Michigan. Some brought their families, some didn't have families, some didn't, some wanted to come back. I got called up to HR, and they handed me an envelope, and they said, you need to report to Auto Alliance in Ford Flat Rock on July 17th, and you can't tell anybody about this that you work with, and you're going to meet a guy there named Tim Hewlett, and he'll show you where to go. And I said, okay. And they said, so go on your 2-week shutdown, come back and work for 1 week, and then you're going to report to Flat Rock. And I said, where did this come from? And they said, we're not allowed to tell you that. And I said, okay. And I trusted it, and I showed up to this plant that has 4,000 people in it, and I showed up at the gate that they told me to show up at, and there was standing Tim Hewlett. And he said, welcome, it's your first day, and you get to start off today with 0 seniority. The clock restarts for you, but you're back in Michigan.
Wow. The amount of how good does that feel to tell this story, even to this day?
So good.
Remembering the Dominick you were, finding faith, finding the courage to believe that things can get better, and not being the angry, hateful, lash-out person. You were able to let go of those chains that were holding you down.
Yeah.
You couldn't see them as that. It probably felt like normal, natural. Of course they should be there, but they were your own enslavement. And then you found a way to start breaking those chains. I want to discuss a little bit deeper into the religion only because of this aspect. When I was a young, very angry kid, I'm very black and white. I'm very if you want me to follow an order or do something, I have to understand it, which probably makes me such a difficult person in some settings. I will not do what I don't believe to be right. Mm-hmm. I don't care what authority tells me. This probably sounds like anarchy, but I don't even give a shit about laws at all. I don't care about rules. It means nothing to me.
Yeah.
I only do things because I know that they're true and I know that they're right. Just because something is a law, I don't care, because throughout human history, there's been laws that are horrific. I won't follow them if I don't believe in it. I'm not going to, if you wrote a law tomorrow that said everybody under this height should be killed, I'm not going to do it. I don't care what the law says. I care about what is right from wrong. But when I'm so black and white to a degree that there is an element of religion that is pure faith-based. And when I was young and very angry and very upset at a lot of the travesty that had come into my life, the suicide of my mother, the suicide of the first woman that I loved, that anger needs somewhere to go. Yeah. And when someone would try to say to me hey man, God's got a plan, I'm like, you shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Because how dare you believe this esoteric type of ideology when I can tell you black and white, my life's getting steamrolled and I'm losing good people that I love. And it was over time. I'm 35 now. I believe you're about 5 years older than me. Yep. But over time, not only do I see the importance of religion, but I think it is so necessary to give people that are suffering, you know what it is? It's a map, man. If you don't want to take it literally as there's a divine being somewhere in the sky, it is a map that if you and I could pass down ancient knowledge to a generation that will come 10,000 years from now, and we have to find a way to communicate with these people, a way to put themselves and their society and their families in order. We're going to have to use incredibly complex stories. We're going to have to use messaging and sermons and things that you have to pull the meaning from to understand the strength of it, because words can change over time. Things can change over time. The way that you speak something can be completely different than the perceiver that reads it. So now when I see a society that is exhibiting symptoms of people that are suffering, of fear that is dominating the minds of millions, and all of these chaoses in the world, not only do I think religion is important, I think it is necessary. Because let's take the faith out of your story. Where does that road lead? What man are you had you never found the faith and the ability to look forward?
I wouldn't be here.
So I am amazed by you. I'm inspired by the fact that when religion came into your life, because it tried to come into my life around that time too, when I was suffering at the lowest, other people that were religious were basically like, things can get better. And I rejected them to the fullest because I was like, how dare you try to say that I have to believe in this thing that like I have no evidence for. But when I found the ability to believe within myself, I found this, that life might be able to get better. That's what saved me, man. I almost killed myself. I was very close to committing suicide. And there was only this deep belief, and maybe that is tied to a religion that I don't understand yet. Maybe that is a divine thing. Maybe that is a destiny. I found something within myself that said, not only should you go on, but you can fight to make this life better than you could imagine. You know, so was there no rebellion or pushback initially? Did you really right off the bat just feel love from the messaging? Like, help me understand that a little bit deeper. And like, were there any moments where you're driving your car? Like, I almost picture if it's hitting you like that, you probably had moments where you broke down, where you couldn't stop thinking about
God.
Go a little bit deeper into that, because I'm so fascinated by it.
It was the love that I never had. Like, it was, like I told you the other day when you were going to speak to those kids in Howell, like somebody spoke to me at my school, in high school, and changed the trajectory of my life, of my mental state, even while I was a bad kid. This did it again. And it's happened multiple times in my life. This was the love. I learned of it, and I do take it very, I read the word, and the gullibleness in me takes it very literally. I believe that Methuselah lived to be 969 years old, right? I mean, and people will look at me like I'm crazy and be like, it's not meant to be that. Whatever. It's how it's written, and that's what I believe. And I believe it because it just brings such a comfort to me that I don't feel like I had maybe growing up. So this God that I follow, that I pray to with my kids every night and pray every morning, like before I work out while I'm stretching, like, this is my Father. Like, this is the closest being to me that I've never seen. And it brings me that power. Like, I truly believe that when Jesus died on the cross for all of our sins, and when he said, when I'm gone, something better will come after me, the Holy Spirit, and if you believe in this, you will be filled with the Holy Spirit. If Jesus could walk on this earth and he could heal the blind, and he could heal the leprosy, and he could heal the people who were paralyzed and make them walk, and he's giving us more power than that, as long as we have enough faith to believe it, then we're superhuman. And that's what drew me to it.
You just gave me a breakthrough sitting at this table. And this is why conversation is so powerful and dialogue is so important amongst people, and why, like I said, the First Amendment of this nation is we need to speak to each other. The breakthrough that I just had is God can almost be, it could be the literal sense. Like, you can literally take it, or you can read it metaphorically, or it's almost irrelevant. The secret is it's like the personification of love, acceptance, guidance, that fatherly wisdom. It's like the personification of those things. And if you can give those feelings to someone, it not only will alter their life, it will alter the way they pull from every experience from now until the end of time, which then in turn changes their children, changes their community, changes. That's the secret. So it's almost irrelevant. Where let's say we were both faith based, and yours is a literal sense of the actual word as it is written, and mine is the spirit behind the messaging that I pull from the metaphors, and it's the same. It's the same entity. It's the same force. I've never, until sitting with you here today, my brain has never made that neural connection where I'm like, it's the personification of the same energy. Because I will say all the time that I believe in there's forces in the universe and these connections, and there is something within us that we don't fully understand that allows us to achieve our potential. And this is a belief and a consciousness, whatever you'd want to call it. Mm-hmm. You found that love.
Yeah.
So let's start to unpack how that changes your life, because there's the initial moments. Mm-hmm. There's those moments you probably had, feels like divine intervention, probably in your car or at home, where you're like, oh my God, this is it. Mm-hmm. Like, this is something that is going to change my life. And then let's hear about the ripples. You come back to Michigan, you're a different man now, you have a faith now, you're able to get into a community different now, you can have support systems that never existed, you can get love and acceptance simply for existing as a human being that you deserved from day one on this earth that you probably didn't get. Let's start to unpack, what does that do for you as a person?
It's not the direction that you think. I came back to Michigan, I got that job, to work in Flat Rock. I bought a house in Novi, closer to my son, who was in commerce at the time. So got to see him during the week, got to see him, all kinds of time. Like, his mom was great about that and letting me see him. Met a girl, not a healthy relationship. Let all the God stuff fall by the wayside. Lost my faith, lost my drive. Spent more time drinking and smoking and partying, went back to that. Things went sour. The buyout was coming along in 2008, 2009. Ford was offering a buyout. And I said, well, I'm going to be first in line. Like, they're going to give me $100,000 to leave, and then I can go pursue my dreams and be a landscaper. I'll start a landscaping company. I did that. I took that buyout. My parents thought I was crazy. My brother thought I was crazy. Everybody around me thought I was crazy, giving up that job and those benefits to go take a chance and take a risk at something else. Still in a bad relationship. Still no God in my life. And I took the buyout. I started a landscaping company. I bought a truck and a trailer. Had my zero turn to go ride around on like Mario Kart.
That is extremely impressive that you did try this. You did. I mean, that's very impressive. That's back to the childhood story that you said one day. And now you're actually having to find out. Some people are terrified of their greatness, Dominick. They will do anything they can to make sure they self-sabotage to the point where they never get to be in the position where they actually get to try to live what they say they could do. Because then if you fail, that is the crumbling of everything that you believe to be true.
Oh, yeah. Nowhere to turn after that. Nowhere.
Except the mirror. You have to look at yourself, and people don't want to do that.
Yeah. So I got $67,000 after taxes. I bought all of this equipment. Went on, did that for a few years, 3 or 4 years. Through the downturn of the recession in the economy, jobs were getting harder to get because it seemed like everybody was a landscaper at the time. Maybe I wasn't prospecting enough for new business because I was the owner, I was the mower. Most of the time I was the weed whipper. I was the biller. I had to go collect money. I also had to go knock doors and put flyers on the doors. Like, I was doing it all. I had my girlfriend working with me and, another employee sometimes. But I was just doing it all, and I was kind of running myself ragged and not.
You should almost expect it. I mean, like, our society does not set us up to be entrepreneurs.
No.
You know that now so well. You were probably a guy flying by the seat of your pants, trying to make things work, making countless mistakes along the way, but you don't know any better. And we are not educated to think the way that you need to think to be a successful business owner.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trying it, and God, man, that is impressive courage that you went for it. And even if it didn't come from courage, it might have come from, hey, the money just came to me, and so might as well do whatever it was. That's impressive. But failure is almost what you and I would expect. That if we heard this story from someone else, we'd be like, you're gonna fail, but you're gonna have an opportunity for lessons.
Yep. So I ended up, losing jobs, People weren't spending money on getting their lawns mowed as much. I couldn't get a plowing account in the winter, wasn't able to live through winter. Ended up having to sell my equipment off and go get a real job.
Here's another huge chapter. Man, you were in Ford. You followed the blueprint. You got to test back to the childhood road that, like, I'm going to be just like that guy with those zero-turn mowers. That had to have been a rock bottom, man.
It was another rock bottom because at that time, I lost my house. I lost my truck. I was able to have enough money to buy an old beater Volkswagen Jetta to start driving around after, I lost everything. In fact, I wasn't paying on my house for, was it a year and a half or 2 years? Because everybody was foreclosing and they weren't locking up doors right away. So I'm like, I'm just going to ride it out until they lock me out. Got a job as a used car salesman and wasn't making enough money to survive at all. I mean, I had enough money to go drink and have cigarettes, but that was it. And then one day, this one of my friends or one of my friends' neighbors wanted to introduce me to this nice girl, and she worked with her at the hair salon. And
you're single at this time, so the other relationship had fallen apart.
The other relationship fell apart towards the end of the landscaping company.
I mean, dude, your life is completely fragmented. You have so many reasons that you could just stay down. You don't have to get back up. I picture in your life and I'm like, man, how could that man have any real confidence or like feel good about who he is or like, but yet you sit here today as the man that you are. Like, anyone that listens to this story, if this isn't the epitome of regardless of the amount of dark that's in your life, there can be a light at the end of the tunnel. So you go into used car sales, you probably, oh my God, just keep going.
Yeah. So basically at this point, I get introduced to my wife, my wife now, right, Lauren. And she was going to school. She was a young 22-year-old girl. She had just graduated or was going to school to become a nurse at U of D, like very good school. She's at the top of her class, very smart. And here I am, this, at the time, 27-year-old with a 9-year-old child living in a house that looks like a foreclosure because that's how beaten up it was. First time she ever comes over to my house, she pulls up in a little white Mercedes, and I have this beat-up Volkswagen Jetta, and I'm a broken-up house, and I'm a broken person. Luckily, the Mercedes wasn't hers. It was her mom's. Her dad was detailing her Fusion at the time, so she drove her mom's Mercedes over. And she liked me still. I tell her that, this isn't going to be good. Like, you really got to get out of here and go do something great with your life. Like, I'm in a bad place. I'm losing everything. I was up front. She's like, nope, I like you. I'm sticking around. Naive, young and dumb is what I would have called it. But she stuck around. So we met in October. Christmas comes along, and her mom, 2 months into our relationship, her parents have never judged me once, not for having a child, and being 27 years old, having a 9-year-old, being covered in tattoos, looking like white trash. They never judged me. They never looked at me sideways. And they had built this beautiful life for themselves, had a nice house in Novi that I was uncomfortable even going to. I'd never even really been in a house like that. Christmas comes, and her mom gives me a gift that Christmas, knowing me for 2 months. And it's a book, and I open it up, and it's a Jesus Calling devotional. And I said, oh, wow, thanks, Deb, but I don't read books. And she said, just read 1 page a day. She said, do you believe in Jesus? And I said, yeah, we had a thing, in the past, and it's been a long time, and it's just not here. She said, just read 1 page a day. And I still have that same book. I've read 1 page a day for 12 years now. And she actually got me my next Bible year later or so. I've read it 3 times cover to cover, and still reading it today. She brought me back to my faith. But let me keep going for a second. Couldn't have been 2 weeks after that Christmas. My son was supposed to be coming over for the weekend. Lauren came over. She came over to the house. I got off work, and I opened the door and flipped the lights on, and the lights don't come on. And both my gas and my electricity has been shut off. And I hadn't paid it in a long time. I didn't know how long. And she said, well, you can't have your son here. It's cold, and, you guys can't. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'll go put a hotel room on a credit card or something. I'll figure it out. But, this is when I'm trying to push her away. I'm like, just get out of this situation. Like, you do not have to be here. I'll figure it out. I have before. I'll do it again. And she goes, nope. She goes, call and see how much it is. And it was $880. She said, I'll pay it right now. And she paid it. And she said, I'm here. I'm here, and I'm here to stay. And I'm like, this is unreal. God brought an angel into my life, and she stuck around. And as I was losing my house, she got a house for us to rent to go live in until, I got my shit back together.
This is absolutely unbelievable. There's very few things in life that cause me to get emotional. I'm just not an emotional person. I have my emotions extremely well regulated. Mm-hmm. So even if I have an emotional feeling, I can generally kind of work through it with my brain and my logic and yada, yada, yada. For someone to see past all of the chaos on the surface, everything about your life, what you were, your income level, your status, how well you have yourself together as a man, she looked past all of that, and somehow her love for you was like, I don't care. I love the person that I see, and I want to support them. That, I'm going to tell you right now, anyone that's listening to this podcast, that is every man's biggest dream ever with a significant other, is to have someone that loves you and sees you through for your value past any struggles that you may be facing. Because if you give a man an incredible support system, someone that loves them unconditionally, they can move mountains. They can do things that they can't even dream of if they have that type of support in their life. Most men never find that. Men, I hate to say this, in our society are valued based on what they can contribute and based on how high level they are. That's why the higher you climb on a success ladder, the more the other features a part of your life don't really matter. Your physical appearance matters less. If you are on a society standard high level, then you can attract a sea of women. Yeah. The amount of women, this is a shout out to Lauren. This is like, because of these statements, I want to bring her on a podcast at one point and be like, I need to hear your perspective because you're going to tell me the way to identify that type of people in life. And then for her family to also carry the same view. Look, I had an experience with a girl that I was dating for a long time when I bought my first house, and I was so proud of myself. Her mom shit all over me. I was nowhere near good enough for her daughter. And I was making $60K a year at 21 and bought my first home, and I felt like I was doing great. And she was like, oh, where'd you buy it? I bought it in Fowlerville. Where in Fowlerville? Oh, right off the exit. It's a place called Red Cedar Crossing. Nice homes. She literally said this to me. She goes, is that over by the trailer park over there? That was how she responded to me telling her the news that I bought my first home at 21, trying to be enough for her daughter. But I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. She treated me like I was a fucking bum. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so to sit here and hear your story, I'm like, that is what you are searching for. You reminded me of Alex Hormozy is a huge famous, you know him. Yeah. His wife, Layla, at one point was in a situation similar with him where Alex says on an interview that he was like, I had nothing. I had lost everything. I had put all my money in a deal. It was failing. I was living with her parents. And I looked at her one day and said to her, you need to just leave me. I've got nothing going. I'm a sinking ship. Like, just go. And this is almost making me emotional because it's like, as men, that is our lowest point, dude. If we feel like we provide no value to the people around us, how your spirit goes on, I don't know. Yeah. And he claims that she looked at him in that moment and said, like, I would live under a bridge with you.
Yeah. I listened to that last week.
I'm telling you what, you wanna hit a heartstring in any man on this earth. If you could find a woman to believe in you to that level, you can do anything. There's nothing you can't do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like maybe that's that same energy that people find in religion is they find a love and acceptance that despite your past, despite your struggles, you have value and you are worth something and you can bring that to light
Yeah.
in this world. There's a movie, not to rant anymore. You know the Book of Eli? Have you watched the
Oh
Book
yeah,
of
yeah.
where
Denzel.
the blind man, but with the word of God, is able to combat the most extreme evils. There's the rapists in the movie. There's
Yeah.
thieves, and the society has crumbled.
Yep.
But the man that keeps the word of God with him is that like he's incredibly powerful. That's what it is, man. It's if you can get those type of connections, that type of love and acceptance, that realization that despite anything you've ever been through, you contain a value within you that is innate from birth, that always exists.
Yeah.
And it's your job to bring it into alignment with God's spirit, with the right thing. Because people that are powerful have a duality. You can be the most tyrannical terror. Like you can be the worst human being ever if you're a powerful person.
Yeah.
But you can also be what we were called to be. And it's like that's where the virtue comes in. That's where it's like, you know, if you have everything in the world, you're a millionaire, you're successful, you have all these things, you have all these accolades, you can destroy your life in a heartbeat. You can destroy people's lives in a heartbeat. And you need the character that can keep you on that path. Hearing this story with Lauren, shout out beyond any shout out I could ever give because that is the love that brings out greatness in this world. And we need a lot more of that.
Yeah.
So you got to tell me, man, I am so glad you talked about that point in your podcast. The woman refuses to leave your side. And you know what? It's almost, she's like, if you're going to be a sinking ship, I'm going down with you.
Yeah.
That demands something out of you.
Oh, it totally.
Because how can someone give you that kind of love and you're not going to step up to the plate? You got to keep the story going.
Yeah. Yeah, that was wild. And still to this day, every time I tell that story, it's something else. So, yeah, she got us our first place. We rented. She finished nursing school and became a nurse. She was working in Detroit at Detroit Receiving.
What timeline is this?
2010, 2011? No, 2010. One of my friends came to me and said, hey, I have this really great idea. I got a startup idea. The Medical Marijuana Act has gone into effect. So it's 2009, actually. They wrote the law. They're allowing medical marijuana. At this point, I'm not smoking weed at all, so I don't know anything about it. And he goes, you got to help me start up this business, quit the car dealership, help me build this thing, and let's do it. Let's be the first one. So we went to the city of Walled Lake where he wanted to start it and said, hey, do you have any ordinance, things like this? You know, they said, we haven't written our ordinance yet. And we said, okay, well, we're going to bring you a business plan. And I got the lawyer all involved, wrote the business plan. We opened up shop. That city ended up writing their ordinance based around our business plan. That was great.
What was the name of the business?
Bazanzo's, still up today. You'll see billboards as you drive down 96. Still same owners other than me. And we were rocking. We were rocking and rolling, and we were doing it for the right reasons. We weren't, drug dealers. We were actually, I was learning about the medical marijuana industry. My friend who had the vision for it, Anthony, he truly did it to help heal people so that they didn't have to be on opiates and drugs for pain and things like that. He was doing it for the right reasons. And then our other friend, Ryan, he was more of the finance side minded guy. And, we're all like, two of us have families. Anthony had another job at Chrysler. He was the money guy. And we opened the shop up. We were doing great. Ryan and I were running it, following the guidelines of the law. I was bringing home good money at this time. So, we're starting to build a little bit of a life for ourselves. And about a year and a half into it, or a year into it, maybe a year and a half, our lawyer called and said, Oakland County is going to start enforcing federal law. So you guys have done well, but they're going to start kicking doors in and taking everything if you don't close. And I said, well, I don't want my son to see that, and any of my family to have to go through that. I'll get out and start over and try something new, right? So I said, get me out of this thing. Like, I'm signing off on everything. You guys can keep owning it. And they kept running it. 2 weeks later, everything that they had was kicked in and taken. They were their homes were raided. The business was raided. Cars were taken. Bank accounts were seized. Everything. It was over. And they got arrested.
How can that work when it was like the city was allowing it? There was ordinances and everything, and they just decided at the drop of a hat, guess what? Federally, it's still illegal, and here we come.
It was the county. The city was okay with it.
The county decided.
Yeah.
And then it just switched, and then they send the police force, and they enforce whatever they decide, and bam, everyone's getting steamrolled.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they went through that. They got arrested on conspiracy of selling to police officers. I'll get into that in a minute. They opened back up when they got out. Basically, a big FU, like, you can't charge us with anything. We haven't done anything wrong. They opened back up, opened for a year. They got raided again. Went to jail for 3 days, got back out, opened back up, and said, let's go. We're not doing anything wrong. Got raided again the next year. So 3 times, all facing 3 felonies at this point.
Did any stick?
No. Because
we'll go figure.
Yeah. So when they went to court, finally, to fight off all the 3 felonies each, my buddy Anthony ended up putting his attorney aside and stood up and represented himself and told exactly what they were doing and why. And what it turned out was that the police officers that they had sold to had legitimate medical marijuana cards that matched their driver's license, that matched another form of ID, which was required to get in. They were state-issued cards. Yeah, everything was.
They followed all the protocols. What did I do wrong?
Protocols.
This is called entrapment.
This
is called 100%.
Got thrown out. It all got thrown out for entrapment. In the meantime, I was out of that business. I ended up starting over, getting a job selling basement waterproofing solutions. I didn't have any skills, man.
I love the bouncing around, dude, to be honest.
All I knew is that, all right, in the landscaping company, I liked the sales aspect, right? In the car sales company, I knew a little bit about automotive. I worked in a plant. I liked the cars. I liked the sales aspect. Didn't make any money. Built that dispensary out. Loved the customer service, sales aspect. So I was looking for a sales job, and I found this basement waterproofing solutions company.
I can actually see the correlations, though. If you look at the complexity of your life and you look at all the different things that you had to go through, from your starting point to the unions to, getting a girl pregnant to bouncing all over to have to leave the state, you have experienced so much life that it's not shocking to me that you can probably make relationships with like every group of people, because you've experienced so much. You've experienced religious groups and people that have their minds in order, and so it actually, the correlation adds up to me. And there's one more lesson to take from your story about that marijuana point that I can't let go of my brain here without saying it. Just because you're doing something right doesn't mean that corruption and all kind of other things can't steamroll you regardless. And some people don't ever learn that lesson. They're like, yeah, well, I should be able to do this. Unfortunately, the world is not fair.
Not at all.
That's like a big message to remember. Like, the world is not fair.
Yeah.
Like, you clearly were entrapped and mistreated, and there was an agenda against you. They had made a decision that they were going to get that business, and they were going to do anything they could to get you. Now, if you decide to stand in defiance of that and say, I don't care the opposition, I'm going to do it regardless, man, more power to you. Yeah. But just don't be shocked if you are repeatedly harassed throughout history. Like, things aren't fair, right? You have to learn how to stand up for what is right and decide the battles that are worth fighting. And, like, I'm a man that dies on principle on a lot of things. So, like, I can respect it, but it is a good lesson for kids and stuff to listen and say, just because you are right does not mean you will not face all kind of insane opposition. You just need to be prepared for it. So if you're going to have that type of stance, make sure your sword and your shield is ready and sharp. So you go into, basement water treat, it's a whole nother avenue But what are the lessons that you pull from the start of your story? Where's the family life like at this point? How are you and Lauren, et cetera?
Yeah, so we were married. We got married in 2012. In fact, from the money that I made from the marijuana business, I used that to pay for our wedding. Got married in 2012, 2013. Oh, actually, 2012 is when I was doing the basement waterproofing. Or actually, when we got married, I was kind of in between jobs at that point. It was embarrassing going to our wedding with all of her parents' friends there. Some high,
How are
wealthy,
things going?
Yeah. I'm in between jobs right now, right? That was really embarrassing, and the family, like we were okay. We were still trying to figure out life, with my son, and what our everything looked like. I mean, she was going to work as a nurse every day, not loving her job. She only worked 3 days a week as a nurse, but 6 days a week she had anxiety about going to work. Right? It wasn't a fun job for her by any means. So I'm just like searching for a way to like pull this all together. Like, she's stuck with me. I need to pull my weight, and we've seen a taste of a little bit of success and money along the way that I needed to get that back. So, I'm going too fast. When I bought my first house in 2004, when I came back and I was working at Flat Rock, my first real estate agent that I was looking for houses with said, "Dominick, you need to be in real estate." And I said, "Chrissy, you're crazy. Like, I work at Ford. I'm making all this money."
She planted a seed.
So I talked about that actually often. And I always joked. I was like, I'm going to be the tattooed realtor guy, right? Because those aren't going away. And along the way, like at some point, I'm doing this basement waterproofing for like a very short period. Lauren goes, "Listen, like, I can hold down the fort. I'm making decent money. We just can't do much extra. Why don't you go pursue this job as a real estate, like this real estate business? I think you would be good." And
so you had like brought it up in conversation to her, or like, why was that on her mind? Did you mention, you know what, this one person told me one time that I should do real estate?
I talked about it all the time. It was always like it was a seed that was planted that was growing for 10 years inside. And Lauren's dad's best friend was a real estate agent. So like we're always talking. It all started to come into play right then. Even though he gave me the advice to not get into real estate, that I wouldn't be able to do it, that it was horrible time to get into real estate. So she said, "Why don't you go try that real estate thing? I think you'll be good at it." And I said, okay. And I signed up for the course. I started taking my 40-hour pre-licensing class. Lauren's dad calls me one day, and he's like, "Hey, I know that in order to do this and do it right, like, you're going to need to, like, get yourself out there and get some business cards and maybe some clothes and, some things," he said. And along the way in life, somebody helped me. He said, "I want to give you $5,000 to help you start your business." And I said, "Oh, my God. Like, I don't even know how to thank you enough." Like,
my father wouldn't give me one penny and said I owed him $100 when I was a child, when I didn't have somewhere to sleep. And you, through the grace of the fact that I'm with your daughter, are going to give me $5,000. Do you realize that correlation right there? Like, I'm sure that that is unbelievable. That is, again, a love being gifted to you, that now you're like, you know what? I owe a debt of gratitude for this.
Yeah. So I wasn't going to let him down. I made it work. And this is actually getting into where we had a conversation before you asking me to be on the podcast. I came to work every day as a real estate agent. I treated it like it was my job, like my business. I wasn't going to let him down. I wasn't going to let my wife down. I got on the phone every day and made anywhere from 100 to 300 phone calls, cold calls a day, and got rejected. I mean, out of those calls, I had a 10% answer rate, and I was rejected probably 90% of those. And as you know, every day I got to come home and my wife would ask me the same question. And that was, "Anything yet?" Every day. And that went on for almost 6 months. Yeah, and she wasn't doing it, right?
No, she wasn't doing it that way, but that's how you would take
that's
it.
how I felt
I'm
very
failing.
defeated.
I'm failing. Why can't I get this together? Why can't I provide?
Yeah. And one day I came home, and it was 5.5 months into this career path, and I have not made a dollar, not a dollar. And she said, maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe, even if you go get a job for $10 an hour at the oil change place, it'll help. And, we'll be able to pay our bills and we'll live all right.
Jesus Christ. Lauren just didn't care, man.
Yeah.
She just didn't care. She was like, I'm with you regardless.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. No matter what. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You found the one, Dominick, for
know.
sure. I know the next story you're about to tell. Please tell it in all its detail because it's so fantastic.
So we lived kitty corner across the street from an oil change place that had a now hiring sign up. And I'd never been there before because I always changed my own oil. So I walked there and feeling very, very defeated, right? Feeling like I'm giving up on everything. I walk over there and I talk to the owner and I say, hey, I see the now hiring sign. Can I fill out an application? I've been trying to pursue a career in real estate that's not working out, and I need a job. And he said, don't bother filling out the application. He said, I want to hire somebody who wants to change oil, not somebody who's trying to pursue a career in real estate. So I went home and I didn't get the job, and I went back to work the next day.
You're like, I can't even change oil. The guy didn't want to hire me to change oil. What a blessing. But man, the spirit that you had to have to go on, it's almost humorous now to look back at it. And it's like, bro, he didn't even want to hire me to change oil. So you go back in for real estate, keep the story going.
Yeah, go back in the next day, and I'm scrolling through Zillow looking for make me moves that they used to have listed on there. You could list your house for a price, didn't matter what it was, and it was like, hey, this is my I don't want to move price. So I would call those just like for sale by owners, and I would say, hey, my name's Dominick over here at Keller Williams. I saw your house listed on Zillow as make me move. Are you serious about selling, or are you just testing the waters? And this lady, Linda Baker, she said, no, I'm serious about selling. I know it's overpriced on Zillow, but I want to sell it, and I need to buy a new house. Will you come over today? And that was my first listing appointment, my first seller, and my first buyer, all that happened the next day. That totaled a commission of somewhere around $4,000 between the two houses after splits to the brokerage and such. And then in the meantime, I have this stack of 3x5 cards from all the people that I've talked to over the last 6 months that told me that they would be selling in the next 12 months, people that were willing to talk to me. I was just writing them on 3x5 cards, flipping through and doing my follow-ups. And in the next 6 months of that first year, I ended up selling it was 17 or 19 houses for just over $3 million, and I made $90,000, which was more than Lauren made as a nurse that year.
Unbelievable. That's the breakthrough. That's what happens in movies, right? You've seen the movie The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith.
Yeah.
You're the exact example of that. Remember, he's there making phone calls every day. His whole life is chaos. He's barely getting by.
Yeah.
You had the supportive woman, and you just stay the course. You just stay on the path. When you got that first check, I know that the 6 months was probably a heroic point in your life where you're like, oh my God, it's coming together. But that first commission, that's probably an indescribable moment. Going home and telling Lauren that I did it. This happened. I'm feeling emotion because that is it, man. That's what we want to do as men. We want to provide for the people that love and count on us.
Yeah.
That had to be such a magical moment for you. And that probably unlocked a doorway in your mind instead of, can this work, to not only can it work, but I'm going to go all in. What you didn't realize is over the course of the 6 months, you weren't failing. You were doing the necessary steps for success.
Yeah.
You were creating the blueprint for how you become successful. You were building the connections and putting yourself out there, and you were failing your way to success.
Yeah.
So 6 months, you start crushing it. You hit $90K in 6 months. You're killing it.
Yeah.
That's all of a sudden you're making a great living again.
Mm-hmm.
how does this story evolve to? Because today you own multiple Keller Williams locations. Your family is so well in line and order, and your children are happy, and like continue to build this story
Yeah.
for me.
So after I did that, I realized that Lauren is miserable in her job. Some of the days of the week, I have to be home to let my mother-in-law leave if Lauren's working at the same time. And I felt like I was missing out on sales opportunities. Like, one sales opportunity could be $3,000, $6,000, $10,000. And I'm turning some of those down because I got to be home to let my mother-in-law go home to watch the kids so Lauren can work. And I finally, we had a heart-to-heart, and her goal in life was to be a stay-at-home mom and to be home to raise the kids. Crazy enough, I said, well, as soon as I triple your income and, so I can have us insurance and everything else, I just need to triple your income and you can stay home with the kids. And it was like a year and a half into my career that I was able to do that. And she was able to stay home because I knew that those opportunities that I was missing out on were costing us her whole income. So she got to stay home with the kids. I kept making those 100 to 300 phone calls because that's how I built my business. I wasn't going to stop. Hired my first coach, which I didn't tell Lauren about because it was more than our mortgage for me to talk to a coach for 30 minutes a month. It cost more than what we were paying out in a mortgage. So I didn't tell her for the longest time. That year, I went from $5.5 million, I went from what was it? $3 million to $3.5 million to almost $6 million. So I doubled my business. And finally, I was sitting down with her, and we're starting to think about, what's next for us, like building this life out for ourselves. Where are we going to live? Where are we going to move to? And she's like, we can't afford to move. And I go, here's something that I haven't told you yet. And at this point, we didn't even have shared bank accounts. I'm saving money along the way. And I said, I haven't told you, but I'm paying $1,000 a month for a coach right now. And she goes, well, how much have you made so far this year? And I go, more than I made all of last year. And she goes, well, it sounds like it paid off then. Right? Like no complaint, no nothing. I'm spending more on a coach than I do on our life.
Wow, so logical. That is like most people don't invest in themselves at all, or they invest the bare minimum, or they look at their life circumstances and they think an investment in them, there's no way they can afford that. If you understood the value of investing in yourself and finding other people that are further along that can guide you on the way, that can bring out the potential that you have, not only would you invest in yourself, you would do anything and everything you could to make sure that you invest in yourself.
Yeah.
But most people don't have that type of vision.
It's scary.
You found such an incredible alignment between the two of you that I'm expecting the conversation 99.9% of the time. The conversation with that is, how dare you, our family, blah, 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 this, that, or the other thing, because they don't see the value of it.
Yeah.
And it's like you just had someone that is the secret of love that very few people will ever experience. Unconditional love is the idea that I accept you for you and I love you for who you are, and I just want you to be the best version of that, and then together we will have the best version of our relationship. That is never the case. I just never see that. It's generally, I love you if you're doing what I want you to do and what I believe to be the right answer.
Yeah.
Is that really the spirit of love? You know what I mean? So you're blowing up, you're investing in the coach. Mm-hmm. When do you get to the point where you guys get to pull the trigger? You say, Lauren, it's awesome that you're a nurse. It's super cool that you made it to that. It's awesome that you were in the work field and did something that you wanted to help people, but you realize your heart wasn't in it. Because if your heart was in it 100%, I wouldn't want to take it from you.
Yeah.
But your heart's not in it. And at the end of the day, children being raised with more time with their parents in a better state are going to, by the vast majority, be way better off than being raised by someone else. You put your kids in daycare all the time, you are subject to whoever the people are that are raising your children.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point? Is it in 2 years of your real estate? Is it a year and a half? How quickly do you blow up to that level?
It was somewhere around 2 years that we got to that point that she could step out. In fact, I started
2017, 2018?
No, it was actually, I got my license in 13.
Oh, okay.
Troy was born in 13. She got pregnant for Cole in 15, and for when she went on maternity leave in 15, she never went back to work after having Cole. So like it was 2 years.
Incredible.
And she gave up. I mean, she was a RN. She's a nurse with good benefits. She gave that up and took a risk on, betting on me.
That's 100% what she did. But man, she had a belief in you when you had no power and
Yeah.
no gas, and you were living in your house with your other. I mean, so it's not shocking to me. Of course, she would take a bet on you. She took a bet on you from ground zero.
Yeah.
And you know what? Those are people in your life that you should value incredibly dearly, because like if you're a man and you get your life together, or a woman, you get your life together, there will be a sea of people waiting for you because they see the value that you bring. If you found someone that saw the value before the world saw the value, that is priceless. That is magic. So, first of all, we've gone for an hour and a half, right? Like, I mean, this is an amazing dialogue. What I'm thinking we're going to do with this is I think maybe because you're really starting to explain the success to like Dominick now, the real estate agent that is doing extremely well. And now we're about to go into like how you buy the company and and how you go up and up and up. But then I want to spend so much time talking to you about your ideologies, about society in general, raising effective children, the lessons that you pulled from the negative experiences from your parents and society, the best experiences, what your mentor taught you. Like, I mean, because that man obviously unlocked several doors in your mind or challenge you to some degree to be greater than what you believed yourself to be. And sometimes you need a rope pulling you forward to reach those levels. You know what I mean? It seems too scary to jump.
Yeah.
That leap of faith is a terrifying thing. You're like, yeah, but like I'm on solid ground right here. And you don't know if you're going to make it. But I think the way we do this, Dominick, is I think we put out this part one of the world because you're now hitting the magic part of the story, the success part of the story. We let people enjoy this dialogue, see you as the man that you are, and then we shoot a whole part two, which is another maybe hour and a half, 2 hour dialogue where it's the second chapter of life. Like in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, it's we've just told your point to where it really starts to click. And then we shoot a chapter two of all the lessons. If me and you were going to write a playbook for other people to follow, to really maximize their potential, having all of the experience that you have, all the loss, all the lessons, what would that look like? I think that's the way we'll format this, because whenever I put up like a 2.5, 3 hour episode, people almost don't engage with it because it is so much to take in.
I totally get it.
If you have the flexibility in your schedule, I'd love to have us go to part two there, because I don't want to expedite. And there's too much that I still want to cover with you in dialogue, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today. And now Lauren, I gotta like make sure she makes her wings not hit the door when she comes in the building, because like it's like you're a rarity. That is not the norm. Listen to most people's stories. You're an oddball, right? Like, and you guys were brought together. That's divine. That's destiny. That's, if you want to believe in things like that, that's how it happens. Because otherwise, the ingredients to the recipe don't add up.
That's right.
It doesn't make sense unless there's something, anyway. So it was an honor and a pleasure to sit and speak with you today. If there's anything else you'd like to say on the podcast, you're more than welcome to. But we will shoot a part two, hopefully within the next maybe 1, 2, 3 weeks. You can get you back in.
Yeah, that's right.
And we will crush a part two. But man, it was an honor to sit with you today.
Man, I've been looking forward to this. So thanks for having me on, and I look forward to the next one.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what, on part two, you're going to see me suited up. When he walked in the building today, I was like, oh my God, how dare you not tell me you were going to wear a suit? Because I always preach to my guys, like, listen, you need to represent the highest level of being that you can be. And I know that some people might say, well, that's just the way you dress. No, the way that you dress, the way that you present yourself, the way that you speak, the way that you interact with the world, all of these things build up into the person that you are. So if you are struggling in life, try to put yourself in order. Try to clean yourself up a little bit better. Try to dress a little bit nicer. Make sure you do your laundry and clean yourself up, and watch how it makes you feel. And that tiny little bit of fuel in the tank will change the world that you perceive. So when you perceive the world as 99% darkness, you do all those things and you go, maybe it's 96%.
Yeah.
What it does is it gives you hope. And if you have hope, no matter how you find it, it is probably the most powerful tool in the world. It is hard to kill the human spirit that has hope.
And confidence.
100%.
Right.
So, Dominick, we'll wrap this one up. I cannot wait for part 2. This is a lot of editing, but I can't wait. Man, it was an honor and a pleasure to sit with you today, and I'm proud to know you and have you as another leader in this community.
Awesome. You too, my friend.